Hello and thanks for watching another edition of ARFCOM News. Did you enjoy Paul's version a couple of days ago? Leave a comment and let him know you want to see me do a helicopter minigun hog hunt. He loves hearing that. As he mentioned, there's a lot going on in the gun world and it's hard for one guy to cover it all. So, I'll continue to do the news on Fridays while Paul will pitch in for supplementals every now and then as needed. Did you get a Bloomberg ad at the beginning of this video? Lots of viewers have been commenting that they've seen anti-civil rights ads paid for by Michael Bloomberg before our videos. I don't know how effective those ads are going to be with the demo watching this content, but I am happy to take his money. If you think about it, that means that Michael Bloomberg is sponsoring pro-gun propaganda, and that just warms my cockles. Mini Mike keeps getting bitten by embarrassing quotes from his past though. It seems like somebody wants to make certain that he doesn't get that nomination, which is absolutely fine by me. New York Magazine reporter Jonathan Van Meter says that Michael Bloomberg ignored an acolyte praising his anti-rights efforts to declare, "Look at the ass on her," aloud to the folks around him. Predictably, Democrat partisans circled the wagons to spin this latest quote with a sort of boys will be boys attitude. Fine, okay, I guess. I just wonder if they really believe there's a single soul out there who can't see through the blatant hypocrisy. In any case, it's a mostly moot point because Bloomberg has about as much chance of securing the DNC nomination as Florida man has of giving up natty ice and meth. I was unable to discover exactly whose backside he was referring to, so consequently, I am unable to report on whether that backside was indeed noteworthy. If anyone has a photo of the backside in question, please email it to chopandblock@ar15.com for analysis, because science! Speaking of asses, it looks like the ATF is trying to make it easier to backdoor gun registration. Every single new gun purchased by private citizens in the United States requires that the buyer complete an ATF Form 4473, which the federally licensed dealer is required to file for 20 years. This form has undergone many changes over the years, but right now, the part of the form that the buyer fills with their details is on the front, and the part the dealer fills with the details about the gun is on the back. Now the BATFE is trying to move that section to the front. If they are allowed to do that, it will make it easier for them to capture and digitize the data on the form, creating a searchable database of gun owners and the guns they own. See, right now when the ATF walks into a gun store to examine records, they can basically do anything they feel like, but if they were to scan all the forms in bulk, whether or not that's legal, they wouldn't have any practical way to associate the gun details with the buyer details, and each document would have to be scanned on both sides. But the form is sort of a booklet arrangement, and that would complicate feeding through a scanner in bulk at least. It isn't that the ATF can't scrape this data already, it's just that the way the form is laid out would make it kind of a pain. So if you're wondering why such a registry would be so bad, it's a problem because it creates an official government document that can be used to identify people who have decided not to comply. Or, to look at it from another direction, why should I trust the government with a list of gun owners if they don't trust me with a gun? That's why the GOA is asking people to write the ATF during the legally required comment period to let them know we're watching. The GOA makes it super easy to fill out a form with your details and just hit a submit button and fire off an email. Link in the description. Aren't taxes awesome? We've got income tax and sales tax and excise tax and property tax and transfer tax. There's all kinds of taxes. Why not another tax? How about a 35% tax on ammunition? State Representative Jillian Gilchrist has introduced a bill in Connecticut that would tax ammunition at a rate of 35%. Now, I mean, obviously none of us want to pay more. If you're anything like me, your skin crawls at the very word taxes. But there's more going on here than just annoyance. For many of us, the tax would just mean that we spend more or we purchase less ammunition. But for a working mom who just wants to keep her ex from walking right through that restraining order, it might mean the difference between competent confidence and just hoping he doesn't come home tonight. All gun laws disproportionately hurt women, minorities, and the poor, but proposals like this one seem to be cold-heartedly and intentionally targeted at people who may not have had the privileged background that Gilchrist comes from. So contact Gilchrist and other members of the Connecticut legislature and let them know that you oppose this tax on ammo because it unfairly targets poor people. Have you had about enough of the doom and gloom? Ready for some good news? SB 7028 in Florida appears to have died in committee. It would have required that private sales of firearms comply with all the regulations that apply to licensed dealers if the sale occurs in a public place. This sort of bill is aimed at the so-called gun show loophole. There really isn't such a thing as a gun show loophole. You can't do anything at a gun show that you couldn't do in an Albertsons parking lot. But it is legal for a person to sell their property to another person. And this bill would have made that a crime. Now, I've been saying for years that if authoritarian control freaks were remotely earnest, they would create a voluntary instant check web portal. A seller could enter the buyer's name and the social security number if provided, and get either a go or no-go from the system. A buyer could enter the serial number of the gun they plan to buy to see if it's been reported as stolen. Both checks would be independent, so there would be no way to tie a gun to a person. At the same time, I know I would feel a lot better about selling a gun if I could do a background check. I would absolutely use it if it were available. I know some of you would prefer not to, and that's okay too. The important part is that we all would have the choice to do as we please. Here in Arizona, State Senator David Gowan is pushing a bill that would discourage gun-free zones by holding government responsible for anything that happens to someone in a gun-free zone. Over the last few years, we've tried to eliminate gun-free zones in Arizona, but we've been stopped. Republican Governor Jan Brewer vetoed a bill that would have made it illegal for government to post no gun signs if they did not also have armed security and metal detectors. You want to talk about common sense gun laws? That's it right there. Gun-free zones are a sham for the most part. But I think many of us can agree that there's probably some small number of places where weapons might actually need to be prohibited, like say courtrooms or something like that, jails.
No blaze, no bows. Leave your weapons here.
Those places should be protected by something more than a stupid little sign, though. If you expect me to leave my gun outside, you had better have a metal detector. And if you make me leave my gun behind, I believe that you assume responsibility for my safety. Honestly, this point seems to be so obviously self-evident to me that I can't believe people haven't sued property owners for the harm experienced as a result of these notional gun-free zones. The current bill doesn't require government offices to make any change at all, but it certainly provides an incentive to either take the stupid signs down or make an actual, earnest effort toward real security. Please contact your Copper State Congress critter and tell them to support SB 1664. Another state that has their mind right is Wyoming. If it weren't a frigid hellscape, a frozen nightmare in the winter, I'd think about living there. Wyoming is considering a bill to render the state immune to federal gun laws. HB 118 would make it illegal to enforce laws that infringe on the right to keep and bear arms. Yes, they mean the 1934 NFA too. So does that mean machine guns and silencers are legal in Wyoming if this passes? Not exactly. It means that if federal alphabet boys want to arrest someone for a sawed-off shotgun and murder their pregnant wife, they can probably still do that. The ATF isn't going to be stopped by state law, but state and local law enforcement aren't going to be helping them either. And the law would theoretically provide a mechanism to sue the feds if they did come in and arrest someone for an unregistered Title II device. How that would actually play out in the real world, I have no idea, but I would love to see it happen. I just don't want to be the test case. Paul reported earlier that the AWB was defeated in Virginia, and that was probably the most offensive of the various anti-civil rights bills under consideration at the time, but the fight is far from over. 91 out of 95 counties in Virginia have declared themselves sanctuary counties. That is, they have no intention of enforcing the unconstitutional laws being pushed by the elites in the capital. Residents of Bedford County formed a militia and mustered last week. The militia is intended to preserve tranquility, peace and order, and to assist the Sheriff's Office and Board of Supervisors. About 500 people signed up, which is pretty good for a county with a population of about 78,000. Before I let you go, I just wanted to share the very best shutdown I've seen in a long time. In response to whining about why a particular shooting wasn't being propagandized very heavily by the legacy media, the Revenant Rising says, because it was committed with a low-capacity revolver, the shooter was black, the shooter broke over a dozen laws in his attack, the shooter wasn't legally allowed to have a gun in the first place. It happened in a state that has some of the strictest laws in the country. It doesn't fit the liberal narrative, and gun control laws did absolutely jack shit to prevent it? Question mark?
Superb. Finish it. Flawless victory. Fatality.
So that's all the news I have for you. Please pause the video here to take a look at the upcoming 2A events and do your very best to attend one. Authoritarian control freaks are pouring truckloads of money into advertising right now. And while I'm happy to take a small piece of that, we have to fight harder than ever before. We're making progress. We will win. And it is worth it. Keep fighting. Talk hard. I love you.